right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to ThanksKirby, a celebration of the life of our favorite badass queen of the Edmonton scene, Kirby. My name is Brent Oliver, and I am one of the members of Team Kirby. Along with Andrew White, Steve Durpak, Rhea March, Melanie Cheeks, Stu Kirkwood, and Bobby Cameron, we were dubbed Team Kirby by the woman herself when back in June we organized her benefit shows at the Newcastle Pub. I will tell you now what she told me then, and I quote, "Put the fucking Kleenex boxes away, no one needs that shit." Tonight is a celebration. Tonight is a party. This is what Kirby wanted. All of her favorite people, musicians, and supporters in one room, raising a glass to her. We have a few short speeches, and then we'll do exactly that. Raise a glass to Kirby. We want this night to be a party. We want you to share the stories with others about what Kirby is and what she meant to you. For me, I met Kirby 22 years ago in her role as a band manager. I called her up to pitch this new music festival in Vancouver I'd been hired to promote and solicit bands. She raked, and I mean raked me over the coals, seeing as this was something that her acts would actually want to be a part of. After our conversation, I hung up the phone, exhausted and humbled. Then I thought, I need to know more about this Kirby person. We became close friends in her time at the Sidetrack Cafe and mine at New City Liquid Lounge, holding weekly bitch sessions about agents, musicians, attitudes, albums, promotions, personalities, and profits. Kirby became my sounding board, and me hers. When I got married, there was Kirby. When I changed jobs, my first call, Kirby. When I needed a laugh or to hear the words, "Can you believe this?" followed by her endearing, hacking laugh, there was Kirby. The best description that I can analogize is that a world without Kirby is like waking up one day and finding out there's no such thing as pizza. What do you mean? I like pizza. I want pizza. Pizza's awesome. I want pizza right now. I sure miss pizza. We miss you, Kirby. And to you and all you've done over the years, tonight is about giving thanks. So I ask everyone to raise a glass for the first of many toasts tonight, and to you, thanks, Kirby.
When I thought back over the 30 or so years that I've known Kirby, what struck me first was what a great mom she was. What a mom. And a single mom at that. I often watched her with Jade back in those days when Jade was barely able to talk. And back in that first of the 3 Riverdale residences. And I noticed that she had a way of directing or guiding Jade that let her be herself, let her become herself. And it was clear that for Kirby, a child deserved the same respect and attention as an adult. I remember if Jade, just barely able to talk, would try to jump in on the adult conversation, and Kirby would immediately stop and turn her rapt attention to this adored little girl, who would now be heard by all in attendance, even if she wasn't making any sense. And it was also clear that she would be gleefully listened to until she was absolutely finished her most imperfectly indecipherable thoughts. And that had a great effect on me, the attention that she gave Jade. And I'm sure many people here have witnessed the way Kirby was delighted at the sight of any child. And how she seemed to understand the power, or the imminent power, I should say, beneath that fragile sweetness. She only needed one syllable, that simple "ah," and that beaming smile of hers, and she could win over any child that had entered. And many of us will remember how that child, because I'm sure it was often one of your children, would then have Kirby's full attention. Until perhaps Kirby discovered some irony in that child's behavior that reminded her of an errant adult. And then she would burst into laughter, raspy laughter, loving laughter, hearty laughter, until you too saw the wonder that she saw. I think Kirby experienced adults in a similar way. We were all her children. We were all listened to. We were all cared for and nurtured, steered and encouraged. What struck me during the last 2 weeks is that I was noticing stories on Facebook that were very similar to mine. I wasn't the only one for whom she had trudged in the snow to bring me a huge bag of vitamins and medicines because I was sick. I also remember when I was making the shift from full-time music to public teaching, and I was broke, and Kirby was broke. And she went out behind my back and borrowed a pile of money for me because she just didn't want me to show up on that first day and not have the things I needed to feel prepared. And if the person who lent her that money is here tonight, please come up and let me know who you are. I'd like to say thanks. My wife, my lovely wife Jennifer, reminded me just 2 days ago that when she met me, my car, the one with the 2 different colored doors, was actually registered and insured by Kirby. Now, I'm not sure exactly why that was, but I can't imagine anybody else saying, sure, I'll do that for you. But she did. And I'm sure there are hundreds of these stories out there, and I wish we could all stand tonight and share them. She really cared. She picked us up and dusted us off. She stayed in our corner when we were beaten down, and she would not be swayed from her loyalty. Because she was one of us, and where the ship sailed, she sailed. And if the masts happened to crash down on the boat, down on the deck, she would stay there. And in a little while, she'd find some humor to make the whole thing seem way less terrible. And she always did these things with the spirit of togetherness. We're together. And always with a readiness to laugh. We were all in our own ironies and imperfections very capable of making her laugh. But she wasn't laughing at us any more than she was laughing at those children. She was merely delighting in our humanness. And almost as if we were children, she was so very interested in all the little details of our lives, sometimes more than we ourselves were. No, go on, tell me more, she would say. Or, oh, how did it go on Saturday night at the gig? How did it go? And how did it go with such and such and so and so? Even during the last disruptive weeks of her life, she could always remember the details of our last conversation. She wanted to know how the plot had resolved. She demanded constant updates because she was genuinely interested, and she could listen because there was nothing she'd rather do than listen to the little stories of our lives. Now, don't get me wrong. She could express herself as well, at length. But she was captivating. She was such excellent company, wasn't she? Smart, witty, observant, informed, present, in the here and now. exuberant, open and honest and caring. She was, in short, uncommonly interested and uncommonly interesting at the same time. And that's very rare, especially in the music business where it's usually on the one side. And therefore, you didn't need to be doing anything terribly exciting. You could just pull up a chair next to Kirby at the board and have the best time of your life. And so it should be. We all know how much she loved the world of music, but what brought her by far more joy was her love of people. So many people. I don't remember very many conversations over 30 years when she didn't bring up the names of a number of people who she just loved. And I see many of those faces here tonight. And that's how she did it. That's how she was so instrumental in helping build this community. She constantly told us how much she loved all these other people, elevating them in our eyes, building trust for people we might not even have met yet, thereby pulling us all closer together. And it won't be the same without her, unless we could do together as she did, because the distances between us now will gradually drift in the other direction. Kirby had an uncommon ability to love adults the way we love our children. She saw the good and she reveled in it. She saw our flaws and shortcomings as endearing and humorous. Now, she also knew her own shortcomings, and she worked on them. And she came to understand eventually that yes, she was pretty much always fucking right. But she learned also that being right in a world of other human beings that she loved could at least be sometimes a bit wrong-headed. I assure you, she knew that too. But she still fought for what was right. And it could be perilous for someone who tried something underhanded in the community that she loved. And pity the poor bastard who made the mistake of underestimating her or dismissing her because she was merely a woman. I remember she was buying her next vehicle. Not a new one, because she never had a new one. And she researched everything. And I felt sorry for those guys she was going to go look at the vans with. And I felt like I should phone them up in advance and say, listen, man, she's coming and she's armed to the teeth. Don't. Put the wool away. Be fair and don't stereotype, because she will embarrass you. And so it should be. You know, people have often written about the stages of human development and how the rare summit that some of us reach is one of unmaterialistic community-mindedness. Well, Kirby achieved that plateau a long, long time ago. The wealth in her life, the wealth of her life, was this community. In fact, she was unwittingly building the very community that she herself took such joy in. I say unwittingly because she really loved that word, and also because she didn't decide to work towards that end. She didn't say, I have to make all these connections and build a community. It was merely the byproduct of her immense delight in nurturing the successes and well-being of other people. So to you, Jade, I will say again, what a mom. What a mom you had. You must be so proud.
Well, this is not the Dinwiddie that I remember and that I'm used to. I think a lot of us would remember the sticky floors after gigs with people like Colin James and Long John Baldry, David Wilcox, people standing on tables after those gigs. It was a pretty wild place back in the day and didn't look anything like this at all. I remember Junior Gone Wild playing here when their Too Dumb to Quit album came out, and Ed Dobeck had mustard all over his hair and insisted on playing, what's that, song for Nigel?
Making plans for Nigel.
Making Plans for Nigel on drums.
Don't tell Mike.
Well, we're here to celebrate Kirby in the way that she wanted to be celebrated. Not a funeral, but a party with friends. And our friend Kirby was one of a kind. Back in the early days, Kirby was doing sound for Tagcore Ride. She was on that famous bus that we've been seeing on the slides. And she also was at many venues here at the University of Alberta, including this one, Dinwiddie Lounge, Room at the Top, and Sub Theater, as it was then called. Kirby also did sound for one of the most acoustically challenging venues in Edmonton, the Power Plant, right on this campus. Kirby did sound for up-and-comers at the Power Plant, people like the Bare Naked Ladies and Roxy Pruvis, again, Junior Gone Wild. And a lot of those, in a lot of those cases, these people would be playing for 100 people or less. But they would all remember Kirby and ask her to do sound next time they came through. Many of us remember her from other venues like the Sidetrack Cafe, Festival Place, the Arden, the Folk Festival, and the Blue Chair. But she was, of course, far more than somebody with great ears who provided exceptional sound. She became an important writer and a publicist, a booking agent, and a manager. And she became an all-round music industry specialist and helped countless young artists on their career paths. She guided them along the way, helped with the granting process, work visas. She gave them her friendship, contacts. She solved problems, and so much more. She taught and always shared information with a generous spirit. Kirby even helped songwriters finish songs and produce CDs. I remember Kirby helped David Gogo once when David Gogo was looking for a new van. He, after getting advice from Kirby, bought one in Alberta because he was able to save the BC provincial sales tax. She could give you advice on how to beat a traffic ticket because she had gone through it. She was somebody who had studied. She wasn't afraid of putting in a lot of work and figuring things out. And she did things above and beyond the call of duty. I remember once when the wonderfully eccentric Long John Baldry came to town. He played the Sidetrack, and they ended up putting him up in a hotel, and we all ended up going shopping for new bed sheets because John wasn't happy with the quality of the bed sheets in his hotel room. Kirby always appreciated John, and John loved Kirby, and she could do a great impression of Mr. Long John Baldry. We all appreciated Kirby's sense of humor, her smile, her politeness, and her always positive attitude. And of course, she had a way of straightening people out if they were prima donnas or had a little music industry attitude about them. And Kirby was also a foodie. She was a chef, and most importantly in her life, a loving mother to Jade. It's hard to believe that it was just about 3 months ago that we had 2 nights of celebrating Kirby at the Newcastle pub. And of course, Kirby was there. She stayed late, and she actually got up and danced at those celebrations. And I think everybody just had a wonderful smile on their face after that. And Jade got up and sang a beautiful version of The Wait. And it seems like Kirby is still with us tonight. Kirby was such a strong and a positive force that she'll always be with us. So another cheer for Kirby, another toast to Kirby.
One thing about Kirby, well, let me rephrase that. There's a lot of things about Kirby I remember, but Kirby had a presence. Something about Kirby, when she walked into a room, you knew she was there. There was an aura, a sense. There's a vibration. She vibrated at a whole different level than the rest of us. And I never forget being in a room with Kirby. And like people have said before me, she always made sure she made eye contact with you and talked to you and made you feel important, made you feel special. It's been said there's 3 types of people in the world. There's those who follow, those who wallow, and those who lead. And we know Kathy Kirby was a leader. And when the storms of life come, the wallower, they bitch, they complain. The follower, they take their sails down and they wait it out. But Kirby, when the storms came, she just reset her sails. And it was a lesson for all of us to learn that she could just take a situation and turn it on its head. Every time we talked about situations and problems we were going through, her or myself or anyone else in our group, Kirby was always there with a quick return. I knew Kirby 45 years, and it was always a pleasure to be in her presence. You always knew you were with Kirby. To Kirby.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Caitlin.
For the past 30 years, I've had the pleasure of calling Kirby my friend. Okay, I'll get through this. Our friendship wasn't entirely typical because there's a 30-year age difference between us, and I was just a toddler when we first met. But that was one of the most beautiful things about Kirby. She rarely discriminated when it came to choosing her friends, and age was always nothing but a number to her. Our friendship evolved over the last 3 decades, and she went from being Kirby, Jade's mom, my dad's great friend, and my occasional school lunch hour supervisor and after-school host, to that of my pal, confidant, mentor, and colleague. I always marveled at Kirby's enthusiasm, everything she did and believed in. She dedicated her life to life, and she was a loyal friend, volunteer, community member, foodie, pop culture enthusiast, feminist, and champion of art and music. And we can't forget her love for Christmas either. Most importantly, she was a devoted mother to Jade, the light of her life, her proudest achievement, and her greatest friend. And we cannot forget her beloved sister and family, Carolyn, Brooke, Robin, and Mason. Most of you know how enthusiastic Kirby was towards her career and the Edmonton music community, but that devotion pales in comparison to her love for Jade and her family. I was recently given a copy of a story Kirby wrote in 1996 for Jade's grade 5-6 class at Riverdale Elementary School. This tribute to Jade and her childhood friends is titled Tales of the Grade 5-6 Everythings, and tells the story of a 2010 class reunion that included a star-studded concert featuring every member of the class. The way Kirby predicted it, every child from that split class went on to do amazing things. One won a Pulitzer Prize, and I think my brother became an NHL star. Of course, the story really starred Jade, or as she was known in this tale, the artist known only as Jade, the most famous vocalist in music of these times. Reading this story now, 18 years after it was written, I smile at the way Kirby captured the relationship she had with Jade, and just how excited she was to see Jade grow up into the remarkable woman she's become. Jade, in case you've forgotten, your mom predicted that you'd create a world in which song lyrics were no longer racist, sexist, offensive, or unintelligible. She also predicted that you and Caitlin Varon would put yourselves through university with scholarships and the earnings you collected from being the highest paid supermodels in the world. No pressure. One of my favorite passages, which I think really reflects Kirby more than Jade, is written as follows. "Mom," said Jade, "if you remember correctly, we used our scholarships for our education and quit modeling. We realized, of course, you were right. It is not what you look like, it is what is inside that counts." "That's right," said Kirby, "and I was so proud of you girls for donating all the money to charities. The most worthwhile of those certainly turned out to be No Aid, New Age Women Against Illiteracy and Disease." Kirby even wrote herself into the story as a loud and outspoken person who had become quite famous in her own right. She was the promoter of all the rock shows in the world and was the most well-known for abolishing all metal music, heavy speed and death, as well as gangsta rap. But don't worry, there was still rap. It just had melody and politically correct lyrics. While art didn't exactly end up imitating life in the tales of the grade 5, 6 everythings, I did notice a few similarities between that story and real life. One, no matter what Jade went on to do with her life, Kirby was eager to tell anyone and everyone what she was doing and just how proud she was of her. Two, Kirby had strong moral values and wanted the best for everyone always. And three, she loved her Riverdale family and all of the kids who grew up there, and I would know because I was one of them. Speaking of Riverdale, that community has been a central character in Kirby's life for the past 30 years. She was immensely proud to be a resident of this neighborhood and invested many years of her life to the events, children, and friends she had down there. Over the last 3 decades, you may have caught her coaching one of Jade's soccer teams, leading the crack team of budding journalists at the elementary school paper, What's Hot in Riverdale, which you can see a copy of over there, and I also worked on. Jade and I reviewed the Grey Cup. I don't ever remember watching football with Jade, though we reviewed the Grey Cup. She also manned the soundboard at a lot of Halloween, Canada Day, and New Year's Eve dances at Riverdale Hall. And you could often find her passionately debating the merits or faults of the most recent Riverdale book club pick, which you could pretty much always count on Kirby having read, unlike myself. Most recently, she was a proud resident of Sundance Place, where you might have seen her sitting on her patio watching the kids play soccer during the early evenings of spring and summer. I think it's safe to say Riverdale will be a very different place without her. I was lucky enough to call Kirby a member of most of my own personal communities. She knew all of my closest friends, all of my immediate and extended family, and the majority of my colleagues. One of my favorite communities, if you can call it that, consisted of 2 people, her and I. We had a very special friendship that's never really been recreated with anyone else. I could talk to her about anything, count on her for advice, and turn to her when I needed a shoulder to cry on, someone to gossip with, or a good laugh. I could always count on her to impart wisdom for any situation or event, and talk me off the ledge when I was having a shitty day at work. She became one of my biggest cheerleaders, almost to an embarrassing degree at times, and she was one of the most important professional mentors I've ever known. She always had the right thing to say, or the right witty comeback for any situation. I'll never hear phrases like, "Lord love a duck," or "he's dead to me," without thinking of Kirby. And the other day, Jade and I were trying to recall some of Kirby's classic lines, and Jade shared one of her favorites with me. Apparently at one time when she was told by someone else, "Kirby, there's no I in team," Kirby quickly retorted, "Yeah, but there's a you and fuck you." That's the classic Kirby that we all knew and loved. My favorite and most cherished memories of Kirby are rather recent and began only 5 or 6 years ago when we started watching award shows together, which if you're her Facebook friend, you may have seen detailed posts about. At first, it was harmless, a good excuse for us to get together, critique the styles of the rich and famous, chat about the year's best performances in music, film, and television, and enjoy each other's company. Eventually, though, this evolved from being a rather simple gathering to a fierce competition. We got to the point where we were printing off ballots for every show and marking down our best guess at who would win in each category, whether or not we'd seen or heard the work we were voting on. And actually, to be honest, Kirby often never saw a movie before the award season was over. She would watch all of the trailers and say, "Oh, that was a really good trailer." And it pissed me off, because I would watch every movie and spend hours like really getting to know the stuff, and she would win. So annoying. Anyways, that whole ordeal became more and more elaborate. We'd have themed dinners before award shows, and she once made Justin Bieber's favorite meal for the Grammys. And there were always prizes given out to the person with the most correct guesses at the end of the night. The winner would even have to make a speech to the Academy. We were so serious about this tradition that once, when I came down with the flu on the day of the Golden Globes, we emailed each other our ballots and Skyped during the entire show while we watched in our respective living rooms. In 2011, she went as far as buying a pile of decorations off Kijiji that included a red carpet and a giant inflatable Oscar. It was always an event. I'm pretty sure that any members of our families or friends that attended, and there's a lot of you here, thought we were completely crazy, but we didn't care. This was our thing. I will never be able to watch another award show the same way, and you can bet that if I keep the tradition going in some way, shape, or form, I'll always have a blank ballot sitting in Kirby's honor. I feel so blessed to have called Kirby my friend. I wouldn't be the person I am today without music, and I certainly wouldn't be the person today I am without Kirby. Tonight we remember Kirby. We remember her kindness, her spirit, her wit, her sassiness, her zest for life, her intelligence, and her incredible passion for music. Kirby, you may be gone, but you'll never, ever be forgotten. So let's raise a glass to Kirby. For Kirby.